Crypto is on the rise, making that dough in the crypto paradigm. Watching it go, buying low, selling high. Riding the wave, I'm here to stay, living in the digital age. No banks, no fees, just decentralized. It's crypto paradise. Ooh. No banks.
Alrighty, let's kick this thing off. Good morning from Paradise Surfers. Happy Thursday, February 26th. My name is Crypto Amru, joined as always by Nick, the Crypto Hitman. We got a great show for you guys today. Bitcoin bouncing. Bitcoin doing incredibly well after it seems like the Jane Street 10 a.m. seller has been sued into stopping their shenanigans. And it got us wondering, if you look across not only Jane Street, but news around Morgan Stanley. Now we have news about Citibank getting involved in Bitcoin and crypto. The Bitcoin ETFs as a whole. Has the inclusion of Wall Street been good or bad for crypto? We'll discuss that topic today. We have some other great stories. News around the Clarity Act come to mind. Some political news as well to cover. So let's maybe take a look at the charts. We haven't looked at charts in a while. Maybe we start with that. We haven't done that since, a few weeks ago when the markets just started nuking. But it looks like this green bounce may have some legs behind it.
Really early. We've been talking about this, how we sold up here at 118, started buying because of this bullish formation we had. We had the breakout to 98K. When things started selling off, we sold for a break even on a stop here. And we bought back on a deeper decline into the low 70s. We've been, still have 66% of our funds to deploy. No funds have been deployed because there hasn't been a screaming buy down here, but we've been talking about how we want to see a V-shaped recovery. We also talked about the next target for Bitcoin and Ethereum would be their overhead resistance and the moving averages here, the 200 and 300 moving average we see. We saw Bitcoin run as high as 70,000 yesterday, giving up some of the gains this morning, but still 67,000 feels a lot better than 62,000. I'll tell you about that. Not much to go off the chart here. No real bullish divergences. But you do have overhead targets that are still several $1,000s higher. Now, the chart that has more technical analysis to look at is Ethereum. Why is that? Where's the Ethereum chart we've been staring at? It's not this one. Maybe it's this one. I don't know. It's not showing the markings for whatever reason. But we've had a white line drawn at $2,050. And we've been talking about the overhead resistance was going to be between $2,000 and $2,100. That's exactly where we ran after the first V-shaped recovery. And exactly where we got rejected overnight at $2,159. So just about $9 or $5 higher than that target number one. We said that would be a resistance just because that is a big mental barrier for Ethereum historically. As we look at all the other price levels around that $2,000 to $2,100 levels, you can see all these resistance levels here. But also we do have these moving averages above at $2,200 and at $2,500. So I think this is great price action for Ethereum and Bitcoin here off the lows. Again, your RSIs are already getting a little high. There isn't any bullish divergence or clear indicators to move higher. But I will say that the macros continue to paint a green picture. Jane Street news and all of the crackdown that's happening to them is clearly helping price as well. They're not manipulating it to the downside. And maybe it's time we start grinding higher. And maybe we get one of those things we haven't seen in a long time. And that's a green God candle that leaves everybody behind. Has you believing, all right, don't worry. Green God candle, it's going to drop 50% and then I'll buy. And it just doesn't give you that 50% retracement to ever buy. You get between that 23 to 38% retracement and just keeps grinding higher and higher and higher, leaving some people behind. Now, I'm not going to say right here, right now, we have a clear indication of that happening. But man, it has been quite a while since that has happened. What's it been? Almost 6 months since we've seen some God candles where bears just never got a chance to enter again?
It's been so long, I've forgotten what it's like to be bullish, to feel truly bullish. I mean, obviously, I can zoom out and understand my portfolio is still up tremendously from when I got into crypto, and I see the long-term vision of this industry. I understand how undervalued it is, but that's different from being truly euphorically feeling bullish. Like, you're actually excited to wake up and look at the chart and get to work and check Telegram and see what opportunities lay ahead. We haven't had that in months. So I think we need a series of God candles. We don't just need one. We did have, I mean, you could argue that, didn't we have like a 7% or 8% day on Bitcoin like a couple days ago when the Jane Street, I guess, stopped manipulating the market? So that was that was a godlike candle for a day. Let's get a series of these things because right now the sentiment, I know we're not at max fear, but we're still well into the fear. I think the latest reading I saw was 17. So off of the low of 6 on that, but still we're quite fearful relative to where we could and should be. Let's get a series of God candles. Let's get the euphoria back. I miss the bullish feeling.
Yeah, we got the ISM expansion. We're into the 52.6 level that we've been talking about, so that's good to see. That's one of the macros that plays into Bitcoin historically. And we see NASDAQ here. People are like, oh my gosh, a stock downturn. Holy cow. Where? I mean, this is exactly what we're calling for. When we went to this new all-time high, we said it almost looks like a double top. You're losing some momentum and some volume, but downside support is going to be major at these two moving averages, and look where you're consolidating in between both. So a high-level consolidation break to the upside would be nice, but again, when you have this consolidation in between moving averages, it kind of serves as a pressure point like Bollinger Bands, where this is getting super tight, and whenever you break out in either direction, it is going to be volatile for a few days. Will it be up? Will it be down? I don't know, but when in doubt, zoom out. Look what the NASDAQ and stock market has done over the past year since Trump has been in office. Even if you break down, you still have major support levels down here at 24,000 that we've been talking about, and then all the way back down here to previous highs to 22,209. Now, obviously, if you went down this low, there would be a lot of panic, a lot of fear. It probably would hurt Bitcoin. It probably would hurt Ethereum, but you still would hold higher levels than previous highs that Trump created himself after he got into office. So I still think the stocks look like they want to grind higher. They want to go higher. All the numbers point to that being the case as well. U.S. investment from all these foreign companies. Apple announced a new warehouse being built. They're building the Mini Mac here in the United States. I mean, all the macros show that the big players in the stock market or investing capital, or investing time, warehouses, and hiring U.S.-based citizens in order to work for them, and all their stock prices continue to grind higher.
Yeah, if you're worried about the stock market, I don't know what to tell you. I think this notion that because we're at or around all-time highs, therefore the next move is lower, which is, theory I've heard posited many times on mainstream, financial media that I follow. I don't really buy into that. I think we have plenty of room to run on this stock bull market here. We've been consolidating in that level for months now, actually. So the chances I think it breaks out are pretty good. NVIDIA beat earnings in a tremendous way yesterday. They were up like 4 or 5%. They make up 8% of the index, something enormous. I think it's the most valuable private company in the world. So, I'm not worried about stock. And the one thing, too, about this consolidation on the stocks, if you dig into it a little bit further, you see that what's happening is some capital seems to be rotating out of the Mag 7, those major big-ass tech companies that everybody loves and owns, into more of the broad-based other, index to other companies, which is a very healthy thing. So, I think we got room to run on stocks. Let's see what the Fed can do. We need a few more rate cuts to get further risk on attitude. But that's, I think, another reason why Bitcoin bounced yesterday. If Bitcoin is still a proxy and related to tech stocks, which seemingly it is if you overlay those two charts. Seeing NVIDIA go up and seeing the stock market recover yesterday, it's not really surprised that Bitcoin also did well. Setting aside the Jane Street stuff for a second.
We got AJ West saying good morning. What's going on? Martin Max King saying hello, and Moonmutt saying hello. Moonmutt, active in the red, active in the green. Pulse Chain having 3 days of green in a row. That is unheard of for Pulse Chain in quite a while, but we'll take it. And then the last chart we want to go over before we get to some news, because we've been talking about precious metals for quite a while. We're warning you at $120 that silver, you would be a seller, not a buyer. I told you, I have physical silver right here. If you had it, you should have been a seller, not a buyer up there at 120. We had a massive crash down to $69, but we've been talking about this rebound and consolidation we expected out of precious metals. That's what's happening as silver rolled over once again up here at $86. But for the bulls and silver, you could have had an inverse head and shoulders, which means that this is the left shoulder, this is the head, this is the right shoulder, which means your neckline is somewhere around here. which means that silver can backtrack as low as $79 to $80 and be simply a bullish retest of an inverse head and shoulder, and then that measured move would lead you back towards $100, really like $96 per ounce in silver. So if you're a bull on silver, understand there's still downside risk, another $7 lower to still remain bullish. If you start getting into the high 70s, well, that neckline is broken, invalidated bullish formation, and that $91 was the short-term top for the consolidation that we've been looking for silver and gold. So watch those levels. We'll be following along in the next live shows. Again, $7 to $8 downside risk in silver per ounce to still remain bullish for an upside target of $96 per ounce. Again, I like those targets. I like those levels because if gold and silver can just get on this long consolidation, last time gold had a 3-month consolidation after a euphoria run, that's when Bitcoin found its exact low, and Bitcoin ran from something like $50,000 towards $100,000 Bitcoin. Let's see if Bitcoin can repeat itself here with the consolidation of silver and gold. But we need a multi-month consolidation, and those people to get bored over there and start seeing the hope, the green candles, and the FOMO of crypto.
Well, I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to start to see that rotation. We need a couple things for the metal run to really truly die down and consolidate and stop pumping. Because you didn't talk about gold. Gold continues to do well, it seems. I think still over $5,000, which is pretty amazing. We need first a couple things to happen, right? One, we need the global instability to die down a bit. Let's get an Iran-America accord. Let's get some sort of. I know they're talking today, allegedly. The parties are talking today. Let's get an agreement in place. That happens, if there is no strike against Iran, you will see gold probably break down further, risk assets do well. Secondly, you just need this tariff stuff to be put fully in the rear view. We were mostly done with it. Then the Supreme Court comes out with a ruling invalidating the basis for a lot of Trump's tariffs. And then he goes out and says we're doing a 10 or 15% on everyone regardless. But most of the countries' deals are still in place. There's still a lot of uncertainty and unknowns around the tariffs. Let's let that story die down a bit. My guess is most countries just keep whatever deal was in place and they continue to negotiate more deals. That's going to calm the market down. Maybe Trump drops some countries below that 10 or 15% level. Okay, great. Reason has prevailed. Cooler heads prevailed here. We're not going into some further trade war with China. We're not attacking Iran. Okay, I guess the world's not as crazy, as scary as I thought it was. I might as well invest in the tech stocks again because it got more upside than gold.
Yeah, and here's the gold chart. Very similar chart to silver, but outperforming here the past couple days. If this was on par with silver, you would expect gold per ounce to be about $70 to $100 cheaper and approaching, closer to $5,050 per ounce. If you look on the small scale here, you do have an inverse Adam and Eve. This is a bearish formation with a measured move that will lead you to exactly $5,000 per ounce, and we can keep the consolidation of gold alive that we are looking for. We don't want to see this thing continue and especially not go to new highs. That's going to put pressure on Bitcoin and Ethereum. Keep euphoria, keep retail interested in precious metals rather than having them look elsewhere. Again, gold outperforming ETH, or outperforming silver, you would expect this to be $70 to $100 per ounce cheaper than where it is today. If you get to that level, the breakdown is going to occur and you're going to head down to $4,994 on the gold spot price. So we'll see if we can get a consolidation. Like we said, last time gold did this massive long consolidation, that was major lows for Bitcoin, which led to a nice double up in Bitcoin rally. The consolidation I'm talking about is right back here. We used to talk about this a lot. Gold peaked in April 21st of 2025 and then consolidated all the way to August. Go look at the corresponding Bitcoin price during this time frame. It was up and to the right while gold went sideways after a euphoric run. Remember, gold ran in 4 months from $2,600 an ounce all the way up to $3,500 per ounce. And once it cooled down, multi-month consolidation, then it was Bitcoin's turn to surge. This entire run that gold has had, this entire parabola here, the only time Bitcoin had outperformance is when it ran from 80,000 to 116,000. When did that happen? Right here at this rotation and at this drawdown for gold. That is the only time during this whole parabola that Bitcoin did anything. Happened to be when gold was going down. The only time that Bitcoin really saw massive gains during this parabola, right here, during this multi-month consolidation for gold. So it's happened in the past. We'll see if it happens again. And we look for gold and silver to cool off here after another massive decade-long breakout that those precious metals had. Shout out to everybody who held some. Shout out to everybody who was bullish on it or chased the parabola, because so far it looks like you made a good move. A decade-long consolidation for gold and silver breaking out to the upside.
I'm still looking for my gold chain. That reminds me, I gotta ask my wife. She allegedly found it, but that was the last I heard of it. I've still not seen it. Maybe she went to the pawn shop and sold it
Cashed
when
it
gold
in.
was running above $5,000, pocketed the money. I'm kidding around, but yeah, what we really don't need is more wars, more tariff bullshit, and what we also need on the positive side, we need to get this Clarity Act deal passed. I think that's really the biggest catalyst that we have to look forward to, and it's one of those catalysts that I think people don't appreciate quite how bullish it really is. Outside of the potential inflows, and we're talking about trillions of dollars allegedly looking to come into the space. And I'm not the guy to say that. There's, there's people that are much more connected than we are into Wall Street and the upper echelons of politics and so on that are telling you that this is the linchpin that we need for trillions to move into the space. But the second thing I think it's going to do is cut down on this manipulation bullshit. This manipulation story, man, it's just a gift that keeps on giving. I don't know if you got that one pulled up around Jane Street. Can we just get these criminals in jail already? Fuck my life. These guys are scum of the earth.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Not only does the Clarity Act allow institutions to feel safe and come into the market, but it also stops the people who have perfected insider trading and market manipulation for their own good at the detriment of the overall Bitcoin and crypto market. It will stop them. Also, I saw that Jane Street deleted tons of their tweets that pertain to crypto markets. That seems like a guilty individual to me. And now, all of a sudden, since they've got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, Bitcoin has had several days of green. So let's see what's going on here. The gift that keeps on giving. We were early talking about Jane Street and speculating on their manipulation. And now the past week, we can't go a day without a story coming out. This is shocking. Jane Street's secret trading technique is to accumulate shares, then dump them in seconds to crash the price and profit from shorts. They ran the same 10 a.m. manipulation algo in Indian markets, but just nobody cared because it was the Indian markets. Nobody's watching that, and made $4.23 billion, which led to a temporary ban by the Securities and Exchange Board of India. Their playbook is simple. Have billions of dollars from investors. Buy spot Bitcoin, say 68K. Open massive shorts via options or derivatives. Sell large amounts of Bitcoin in minutes with algos combined with lower liquidity or negative news to trigger panic selling. Wow, sounds very familiar. Price crashes to 62K. Close shorts for massive profits while losing just 5% on spot. Buy spot Bitcoin again at 62K. That also reduces their cost basis down to probably 65K. Squeeze the shorts, create FOMO to push price higher. Open massive shorts again, sell spot. I mean, the playbook that works on any market, but Nick, why does it work on Bitcoin so well? Well, because you don't have as much regulatory oversight right now. You don't have the Clarity Act in place. And right now, without retail in the markets, and you have OG whales saying the 4-year cycle is here, well, liquidity is extra thin, which means easier for them to move the markets with less liquidity. And to even further validate this, if you look, in India, Jane Street still has $560 million that is frozen in an escrow account with the SEBI, and the manipulation case is ongoing. I don't know if Jane Street really cares because that means they pulled out nearly $4 billion in profits from that market, but they cranked down on it and locked up $560 million of the remaining funds that they have in those Indian markets.
Well, they should care because my guess is the Department of Justice does not just turn a blind eye to this. Obviously not with respect to what happened in India. The Indian authorities can take care of that. But if this is to be believed, which it seemingly is, and then if the claims and accusations in that lawsuit around Jane Street basically crashing Terra Luna based on insider information, that is an easy of a criminal insider trading case as you can make. And there's probably a lot of people that were in on that at Jane Street. So am I surprised they deleted their Twitter? No. Am I surprised there's massive fallout from the crypto community? No, I'm not. Would I be surprised if their criminal investigations and suits and prison time to follow for the executives who were in on all these schemes? I will not be surprised. But what we really need, we need the Clarity Act passed so these shenanigans can be stopped. There's more oversight. There's more regulation. We kind of had this discussion yesterday around Trump versus Biden, whatever, who would be better for crypto. Once Clarity Act passes, That's it. We know for certain that Trump has been better and will be better for crypto. But we really need this manipulation to end. It's wrecked enough people. It's hurt enough people. Let's see some accountability, and let's see this thing stop, because I'm damn sick of it.
Well, and the hope is that the other big players aren't trying to replicate what Jane Street is doing and trying to make a buck off our back by doing some of the same practices. Obviously, they can avoid some of the punishment. Maybe they get scared off by the Jane Street fear, but if you're trading, it's trading, as long as you're not using insider information. So we'll see if that happens. It'll be quite devastating if somebody tried to replicate that. But there is some good things going on for Bitcoin. That is also helping price here. So let's take a look. Bitcoin spot buying demand is back. Highest level since November. The 30-day apparent demand just flipped strongly positive after a prolonged period of absorption. Sell pressure has been exhausted and spot buyers are reclaiming control. This is how the reversal starts. So, a little bit green candles maybe gets retail putting some money in, but I still think there's strategy in these big institutional players that have been buying Bitcoin the entire way down that are still buying. The only difference is now you don't have the likes of Jane Street selling on your head via, leverage position as derivatives and spot price manipulation, which is allowing Bitcoin to breathe a little bit, up $5,000 off the low. Yes, we're still at 67. No, it's nothing to be excited about. We still got a long way to go. But we know just like Bitcoin can go down very fast, Bitcoin can go up very fast as well. And it's nice to see that spot buying demand is back, because remember, the reason you're in Bitcoin and crypto assets is transparency and scarce digital assets. They have finite supply. So when you can get supply shock on cryptos much more easier than that of stocks, which have stock splits and all these other things that can dampen down momentum. When you get momentum in a scarce digital asset that has a set inflation rate with a finite supply and transparent holdings, that is why Bitcoin and crypto can be explosive and will be explosive again.
Well, that's the problem with Wall Street having gotten involved in this space, because it used to be just pure spot. I mean, there used to be no derivatives at all, right? And now you have all of these different instruments, and we see exactly the downside of that with Jane Street. And I'm sure there's other market makers that are basically employing the same playbook, hopefully not to the same extent, and hopefully they change their tactics a bit. But having Wall Street involved in crypto, it's certainly a double-edged sword. Happy to see retail jumping in here and buying the dip. I mean, Bitcoin is highly, highly undervalued if your time horizon is 10 years. Full stop. Like, if you like this asset and you liked it at 100, you should love it at 68. So, I'm not selling anything here, and if I had any dry powder, I would buy. But, I mean, you talk about it being a finite digital asset, and that is true in this as the base layer. But now there are all these derivatives and instruments sitting on top of it that you don't even necessarily have to hold spot Bitcoin to utilize those instruments. It's kind of crazy. And I don't think I like it that much.
No, and I've been saying that since 2017 when the high was marked because of futures trading, not spot futures, just futures trading was enabled on Bitcoin, and that is when the shenanigans really began. But I will say, it's still a finite digital asset. When you have governments buying it, it's transparent in the books, you can see. When you have strategy buying it, it's transparent in the wallets, you can see it. And the fact of the matter is, the same applied to gold. When gold bugs, all these derivatives, nobody likes it, this, that, and the other. Now gold is worth $35 trillion. So even with derivatives, the strong assets, the finite assets, the assets that are clinged onto by the general public and by governments all around the world, still find a way and manage to find a way to go higher in price. Although the derivatives and all these other things slow it down at times, are detrimental at times, in the end, the fundamentals win out, and the scarce assets continue to grind higher. So I don't love it. I've been saying that for a long time. Think of how much retail gets wrecked. Every time there's a liquidation, that could be money that still remains in the market. This is what I've been saying forever. When you lose doing leverage, you're taking that money from somebody else, but those gains that are accumulated from your losses are going to an exchange. And what's the exchange have? The exchange has overhead, server fees, employees, and the list goes on and on. So all that money that could have been in the market holding spot Bitcoin, spot Ethereum, spot Surf token, whatever it may be, instead is in the hands of exchanges, being paid out as salaries and converted back to fiat, taking out of the crypto market forever. So that is what slows down the market, and that is what you're talking about with all these derivatives, all these leverage, all these exchanges, all this overhead that doesn't stay in the crypto market anymore. It gets removed into fiat ecosystem and spent in the economy on some plastic trinket from China.
That's a great point. And I think as the market points its finger at Jane Street and, oh, they're the cause of all our woes and they've destroyed crypto and they're the one who dumped the price down or whatever, you got to look at yourself in the mirror too, especially if you've been messing around with leverage. Especially if you said, I'm going to try to get rich quick. I'm not going to buy actual Bitcoin. I'm just going to speculate on whether price go up or down. And eventually you probably lose and give all of that money back to the market. And all those things that Nick just mentioned come true as the exchange is pulling money out of crypto. So the get rich quick mentality is likely as to blame for the woes that we've seen in terms of price performance as anything that Jane Street did. So look yourself in the mirror sometimes, guys. It's a good exercise. I'm not blameless. I messed around with leverage, got wrecked, and now I'm done. So I'm not making that mistake twice.
And I do very little leverage trading, or maybe we do 3x calls, and overall we've been more successful than losses. But the other thing to blame is too is we get in the trenches, we trace some shitters, and when those are rug pulls, you're hoping the dev keeps the money in the market at least. They could be taking out as well. So there is other things besides leverage that can be detrimental to the market. The amount of money I've lost on individual altcoins that are straight up rug pulls is probably a significant amount. And if I just had bought Bitcoin or ETH, obviously that helps the market. But that I probably get offset due to the economic power getting into other altcoins that do have success and have done very well in price as well. So, there's bigger than just the derivatives, bigger than just the leverage. We're not saying that's the only problem in the space, but that is a major problem, and that is the quickest way to wreck yourself when you could have been holding spot and could have been one of the many millions of people supporting price by those spot holdings as well.
For sure. And look, everyone has to learn the hard way themselves. I think that's normally what happens, right? Because at times the greed takes over. Oh, you saw someone else do really well, or you heard a story about a guy and you're like, I'm going to get involved in the trenches, whether meme coins or whether leverage can work out for a while. Usually you end up getting wrecked. So you tend to learn the hard way. I learned the hard way when it comes to leverage. In terms of, finding projects in the trenches, I think we've been pretty decent at that. Yeah, there have certainly been rug pulls over our tenure here in crypto. But as long as you're able to take some profits, and usually what happens is not a straight up rug pull where liquidity is removed, but dev gives up or whatever, the project kind of slowly dies off, and you can take some money out. That's very different than losing everything, which is what happens if you lose on leverage.
And talking about losing everything, the banks who said that Bitcoin was a scam continue to pile on. Breaking news, 2.5 trillion Citibank announces it will integrate Bitcoin this year. Quote, we are making BTC bankable. Well, about time, Citibank. But 2.45 trillion in assets. Again, if you do look at all the math of all these banks and the AUM you have, not going to say that all that AUM is coming to Bitcoin. But even if just 1%, 5%, 10% of these AUM is coming to Bitcoin, Bitcoin price only can go one direction, and that's higher, because right now, what is even the market capitalization of Bitcoin at these current prices? Less than $2 trillion? And now you have all of these banks who have trillions and trillions and trillions of AUM who are going to be preaching that 1 to 5%, up to 10% of your investment accounts or your savings accounts need to be getting into Bitcoin, Ethereum, or other crypto assets as a hedge or diversifier to a rounded portfolio. We've been talking about this for a long time, all the way since 2017, and people are like, Nick, we've been waiting forever. Well, Bitcoin price has gone from 180 to 500 to 1,000 to 20,000 to 126,000 and currently at $68,000. So although we've been talking about it for a long time, slowly but surely, institutional investors are utilizing their 401k money, their Roth IRA money, their investment account money, and buying Bitcoin and Ethereum. Otherwise, Bitcoin price wouldn't be 68x higher than when I first started talking about this.
Yeah, this Citibank story is one reason why the question of whether Wall Street is good for crypto, that's an interesting question. Because on one hand, you have Jane Street, the manipulators, the market makers that are fucking everyone over with leverage and manipulation and options and derivatives and so on. And then you have the likes of Citibank. Morgan Stanley just announced yesterday, I believe, a similar story. Hey, we're going all in on crypto, Bitcoin, enabling it for clients, investing, whatever. There's going to be all these different instruments you'll be able to invest in it through. Overall, I think if you look at the balance of everything, the inclusion of Wall Street has been good for the price of crypto. It's not an unqualified good. It's not only good, but 60% good, 40% bad, maybe. I don't know. You can make that argument. Maybe some people want to say less, more. It doesn't matter. For the most part, it's been good. And if you want to see Bitcoin hit 1 million, my price target for Bitcoin is $1 million Bitcoin by the year 2035. Absolutely achievable, but only if Wall Street builds all these products, has their advisors call all their wealthy people and say, allocate 5%, and here's how. That's how you get to $1 million. But you're not going to happen on the back of people like us, degens who are just like trying to, retire early on a beach. Like, no, you need to get your dad involved. You need to get grandpa involved. He's got a couple million sitting in an IRA, right? Move some of that money into Bitcoin. Do it through Morgan Stanley, Citibank, Bank of America, etc. That's how you get to $1 million Bitcoin. So I think all good on the whole, but yeah, it hasn't been unqualified good, has it?
That is very true. And the last news piece here that I want to cover about Bitcoin is this one. Senate Democrats to meet on crypto market structure bill discussion today at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time ahead of White House stablecoin deadline on March 1st. Remember, February only has 28 days, so that March 1st deadline is coming very quickly, and we know that government doesn't like to move fast, and Democrats definitely don't like to move fast, so we'll see what happens. They got real lazy with 4 years of Biden, where he did like a press conference every quarter. But anyways, we need the bill to pass ASAP. We've been talking about wanting the bill to pass by March 31st, by the end of March, and we are approaching these dates that we wanted, and the government has put some deadlines on it as well. What do you think that the Democrats are going to say about the market structure bill? I know some Democrats do like Bitcoin and crypto, but there are also very loud voices in the Democrat Party that absolutely hate crypto and Bitcoin, have forever, and hate Trump. Probably hate Trump even more after the State of the Union, where he was literally gambling, rolling the dice to show how big of scumbags the Democrats are, and they lost, he won. So I'm sure they're going to be upset, just like we talked about how Powell could be politicizing the hatred of Trump. Democrats definitely, after the State of the Union is so fresh, only a day or two old, are not going to be big fans of Trump or anything Trump and the administration wants to get passed.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about where this bill gets passed. I think it does. I think it absolutely gets passed. We'll see if it happens, on March 1st or shortly thereafter. But if you look at what's happening behind the scenes, you have the likes of Beau Hines, who is in the White House or was in the White House. He's been following the bill's progress very closely. He basically said that the stablecoin issue is resolved for the most part, and now they're just tinkering and tweaking language around various provisions in the bill. So it looks like this thing is really close to getting finished in kind of the drafting stage. And then once it ultimately gets out of the committee and onto the House and the Senate floor for a full vote, the good news is the Republicans still have the numbers to pass pretty much whatever bill they want if just a couple Democrats come across. And there's enough Democrats that are like, this isn't even that political. This is going to help Americans. Anyway, Coinbase donated $2 million to my campaign. So, a couple Dems will come across. This thing is going to get passed. I don't think it's priced in yet, though. Because outside of that Beau Hines interview that I saw drop like a couple days ago, I haven't seen too many politicians coming out and saying, yeah, this is like as good as done. As soon as we get news, we get enough people around that saying that, I think you're going to see the poly market odds shoot up. You're going to see the price of Bitcoin and ETH rise. And ultimately this thing gets passed in hopefully early March.
Yeah, I would agree that I don't think it's priced in, first of all, because of the downside that Bitcoin's already had. But number two, after just seeing all the hoopla around the State of the Union and what's been going on and public perception, there's a lot of disagreement going on between the Democrats and Republicans, obviously. So people are like, this ain't going to get through. And especially what we saw in the Agriculture Committee, where 12 Republicans voted yes, 11 Democrats voted no. That's as close as it gets. People are still doubting that Democrats are going to come across that aisle. So I do think it's going to get passed. I think there's Democrats that have openly supported Bitcoin in the past, and maybe they'll put their party lines aside to vote with what actually matters, and that's representing the people who elected them and representing based on policy and merit, not based off of just a political line. So I think it does get passed. It's not priced in yet. Bitcoin is undervalued in general, plus just a lot of conflict around will anything get moving on this bill. So I think it gets passed. It gets put into action before the end of March. We meet our timeline, wanting it done by the end of Q1. We move on to more interest rate cuts here in the next 20 days. Mortgage rates just fell to the lowest level since 2022. We have tariff rebate checks that will happen. We got big tax refunds that people are getting. I'm out in Walmart buying sodas for vending machines. I'll tell you what, These Walmart people, they're talking about their refund checks. That's all I know. I don't get refunds, but they're getting them refund checks. We just need to like have some Coinbase ads at Walmart's, Dollar Generals, Family Dollars, Dollar Trees. Maybe that sounds, I don't know, rude of me, but it's just a reality of the state of those stores. And those people are openly talking about it when they're in there. So let's get some of that refund money to come into the markets. And I still think a lot of the bullish macro fundamentals will play out over the course of 2026. Now we need to see if we can find major lows here around in the 60s, not get down to the 40s where the bears want to see it, show momentum to the upside, show the extending of the cycle, and get all the people who took profits at higher levels or sold the lows on the way down who are waiting for 40K to get buying at higher levels and get that super cycle underway.
Yeah, I don't know if you need the Walmart types and the Dollar General types to actually buy crypto directly. What you need is them to feel confident, to start spending more again. Then what happens is Wall Street starts to get more confident. Oh, look, the profits of Walmart are up. The profits of this, that, the other consumer discretionary is up. The economy is looking good. Oh, ISM is expanding. Middle class or upper middle class, they start spending more money. Oh, I'm going to lease a new car. Oh, buy a new house. Oh, okay. And then all of a sudden money starts flowing in the economy again. Prices of your favorite companies start to go up. And then everyone gets risk on. Wall Street gets risk on. And they start pouring their trillions into crypto. So I don't know if you necessarily need like the Dollar General types to go out and buy Bitcoin directly. They just need to buy something with the rebate money and stimulate the economy, and eventually it'll flow into risk assets.
And here we go. Bitcoin's still red on February. Remember last time we had, 6 months of red here. It was followed by a 4x return in Bitcoin over the next 5 months. So this is the longest streak of red in history, all the way dating back to 2018, before the 2019, 2020, and 2021 major moves. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think February closes red? Do you think we match that and have a red March as well before we start to get some multiple green months in a row? What's your outlook? There's only a couple days left in February, and according to CoinGlass.com, we're still down 13% on Bitcoin, even after the 9% rally we saw yesterday.
Yeah, I don't see how we end up green for the month. I guess, hell, three bullish days, 3 days of 5%, and I guess you're there. But I don't know if it happens in February. Maybe we end the month down in February, but not massively down. I don't think we get 6 months in a row. I don't think March is red too. The only caveat is, what the hell is going to happen with this Iran situation? Are we going to strike them? Are we not? Party's going to negotiate, come to the table or not. But I guess even if we do end up in a little skirmish, because it's not going to be a full-on ground invasion, it's going to be what we saw last April, bombing their sites. Maybe they do a retaliatory attack on Israel or some assets that we have in the Middle East. We probably don't end up suffering any casualties as a result of that. And the thing's done over in a week. And then the market resumes higher. So let's just see what happens there. That does, if you're a short-term trader, I would be a little bit concerned because at any moment, we could get news right now. Oh, just shot off a bunch of missiles. Guess we're going to war with Iran now, market nuke. So, short term, we'll see what happens. But longer term, man, I don't know. There's too many bullish macros. I know we've been saying that forever, but too many bullish macros to get 6 months of red in a row, right? When everything else is at all-time highs, don't we think? It would be crazy if we get another month of red. I don't see it happening. So let's get even March.
We've had these 5 months red in a row after that October 10th liquidity crisis that we now know was kind of orchestrated and done by many big names in the industry. And that was exacerbated to the downside by Jan Street, who is getting caught now with their hand in the cookie jar. Not fun, to say the least. And it only got more 4-year cyclist believers on board, selling out for any remaining profits they had on assets across the board and looking for $40,000 to $45,000 Bitcoin before they're going to buy again. So I hope, first of all, that this can be a major reversal point. Second of all, I hope that those bears and those 4-year cyclists don't get the 40 to 45K. We don't get the typical 4-year cycle, and they have to buy at higher levels because that puts more fuel in the tank, keeps more of the believers on board, and gets more fuel in the tank because they will come back into the market. Many people who sold for the 4-year cycle, there's some who said, hey, I had $9 billion. I'm going to sell and just live a good life. But most people are still believers of Bitcoin, the asset, Ethereum, the asset, and crypto, the asset class. They will be back. They're just looking at the history of the 4-year cycle, playing it safe, and looking to buy back at 40, 45, 35, or even 50K. And if they don't get that opportunity, they get momentum, they see a switch, a reversal, and the bull market begins again, they will redeploy funds back into the market, spurring momentum and spurring more green candles. So that's what I'm looking for. I think February probably still ends red, but then we can lean on the history of, wow, that's the second longest red streak for Bitcoin. We got the Clarity Act about the past. We got interest rates getting cut again. All these things that could build to allow Bitcoin to have multi-months in green. That's what we need. We need a multi-month green rally out of Bitcoin to allow risk on assets to take off, to allow Ethereum to continue and to start outperforming Bitcoin again, and allow the altcoin trenches to come back alive.
Yeah, I mean, I know it doesn't feel possible right now because after 5 or 6 months of red, the notion of bullishness just is completely eliminated from your mind. You just can't imagine Bitcoin or ETH doing well. But of course it can, and it will. We know that it can and it will, but emotionally it's very hard to accept that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's a world, there's a timeline, a version of the Matrix where in 2 months from now, the prevailing narrative on X is going to be the 4-year cycle was never a thing. 5-year cycle is what it is. It all follows ISM. Raoul Pal was right all along, and I'm full porting all my stablecoins back into crypto because 4-year cycle is actually dead. In 2 months from now, that could be the story.
Headline, Bitcoin breaks 100,000 for the first time in 6 months.
That will be headline news. That will be headline news when that happens. And let's hope that the next run is a little bit more sustainable. Let's hope that with the Clarity Act passage, a little bit less manipulation. Let's hope with all Wall Street banks coming on board, your dad and your mom and your grandpa are able to buy in and grab a bag of this stuff too on the way up to $1 million. I think it can happen. I think it will happen. And I would not be surprised if in a few months the tweets we're seeing on crypto Twitter is all 4-year cycle is dead, long live Bitcoin, we're going to $1 million.
We only fear that black swan of Iran. And breaking news, the USS Gerald R. Ford is expected to arrive in Israel within 24 hours. When that arrives, does that mean that the U.S. is poised, protected, and ready to strike Iran, or are we just bluffing? Will Iran call our bluff with attacks on American soldiers in the Middle East, with attacks here in the greater 48? We shall see. But 24 hours to 48 hours from now, a lot of information, a lot will be told about the potential black swan of the Iranian war. Also, is that already priced in? Because now there's been a week long of rumors about Iranian strikes. What do you guys think that are watching? Are we waiting on the USS Gerard to get there? Will it already be priced in? Will there be sustainable black swan if indeed we do attack?
Yeah, I've been following the Iran story pretty closely, you could say. And based on the military analysts that I've been watching, it feels like a strike is likely. And that is because I guess the U.S. is not really understanding the Iranian regime's point of view, which I guess is the U.S. aggression is proof as to why we need the nukes. So it's like we can't give up the nukes or else they're going to try to kill us all or something like that, which I don't think is true whatsoever, but that's, I guess, what they're thinking. So they're kind of like backed into a corner where they feel they can't back down from this, and it's better to just get attacked.
Yeah, the current regime, I think.
Hey, look, big bad America fucking shot a missile at us. Hate them, don't hate our regime. So, yeah, I think we do end up striking them. But not until we give it a good old college try to get the negotiations done. But I don't see it working out.
Yeah, I know that I have seen that there are some protests from the citizens in Iran. Even though when you protest in Iran, you're likely to get taken off the streets and killed. The Iranian citizens are not the same as the Iranian regime, and they're really against the Iranian regime from all the data and information that I can see. And if you also look to Iran back in the 70s, it looked a lot like the United States of America. Obviously, the culture has shifted in a big way over there with terrorist organizations, Sharia law, etc., etc. but it's not really what the general population wants. It's kind of a situation, a more extreme situation of what is going on in Mexico. Think of the Iranian regime as the cartel of Mexico. They got so powerful that literally these became terrorist countries. That's what Mexico is trying to fight to stop now as well, is the cartel is just going to get to a point where that's just a terrorist regime as well and really running a whole country. So there's no right answer. I don't know what to do. I don't like war. I don't want to be involved. But I do feel for the citizens over there who are either fleeing or trying to stand up to the regime. They're probably rooting for America to strike to weaken the regime, and maybe there'll be regime change. But history has played out before, and regime changes don't always fix the problem. Yes, it stops terrorist cells in that area. Yes, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but normally that regime change then gets confiscated as well, taken over, manipulated, and we're right back to where we started.
Yeah, I think in this case, a regime change will be welcome, though. I can't imagine anything worse than the current Iranian regime. So if we do attack, that would be really the best outcome, in my opinion, is if, like, then the citizenry, which I think you're absolutely right, they're not the pro-regime, they're very against it, would actually successfully rise up and somehow take over and reclaim the government and reclaim their country, in a full and effective way. The problem, as I understand it, is even if you kill the supreme leader, the whole regime is still kind of intact. And what happened, like, even only a month ago, when there were those uprisings and the protests and all the college kids going out protesting for like a week straight, and everyone was like, "Oh, is this it for the regime?" Then they came and they found who was protesting. They killed like 32,000 of them. I mean, an enormous number of people were murdered, which is just madness. So it's funny how everyone protesting.
Where are the Democrats?
Down with Israel. I can't believe they killed people in the Gaza war. Where were you when the Iranian regime killed 32,000 young innocent college kids?
And that's going to stop a lot of the citizens from speaking out, fear of dying, but also that's 32,000 less people against their regime. That's a lot of people, guys. That's a whole college stadium full of people killed forever that was anti-regime and willing to stand up and risk their life. They knew they were risking their life because that's part of the problem in a lot of those countries in the Middle East. Sharia law and the ability for them to literally kill you. Here you have federal agents literally getting spit on, cars getting shot at, NYPD getting snowballs to the face, drawing blood, and they don't even get arrested. And other countries around the world, you say United States is so bad, so evil, other countries around the world, 32,000 people rounded up and slaughtered for trying to stand up to the regime. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I would love to see a regime change. I do think it would be, if it were possible and did happen, I do think the alternative would be much better than the current status quo. But let's just see, man. I mean, Trump doesn't have a lot of great options either, because I don't think they negotiate, but I don't think he really wants to strike them. I don't think the American people want it.
No.
He hasn't really articulated why we need to do it. So, I don't think Trump's in a good spot. Obviously, the Iranian regime is very weak. They don't want to get attacked, but they apparently don't want to give up their nuclear ambitions either. So it's a bit of a mess. But as it relates to the markets, even let's say worst case scenario, right? Like, okay, there's an attack, a retaliation, blah, blah. We maybe have a week, 2 weeks of that back and forth and kind of uncertainty. But if you look what happened last April, I mean, yeah, it probably caused the market to crash for a few days, but then we were just resumed back, to normalcy and price going back up. So I'm not extremely worried from a market performance standpoint, other than in the short term. But let's just hope they can come to an agreement, get the nukes discussion done, and we can move on to a different topic, right? Let's move on to something. Let's have less geopolitical drama for once. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes, sir. Brighter side, Ethereum still holding $2,000, which is good. PoolX is up to above 11 cents, up 51% since Crypto Paradise made the call on PoolX and got involved with pools. So shout out to those of you in the face of red candles on Ethereum and Bitcoin, up 51% on PoolX token. Pulse Chain is slightly red, down 1%, but PTGC is up something like 25% off the low. Surf up something like 25% off the low. So good to see some green there. Obviously still high or far off the all-time highs, but you got to start somewhere. And I like portfolio going up, portfolio accumulating passive income, and the tokens I hold are becoming deflationary. That's what I like to see, and you got to start somewhere. So you got to find the bright spots and everything going on, all the chaos around the world, all the chaos in the politics here in the United States of America, and of course the red candles we see in crypto. But we shall see what happens here. Let's see if Ethereum wants to hold these 2,000 levels and continue to work higher. But again, it's going to be interesting because 24 hours from now is when the U.S. Gerard gets off the coast of Israel. And when will we see that first strike on Iran? I don't know. They're probably waiting for that ship to get there.
Maybe they wait for the weekend when the stock market's closed. That's what they did last time. I think they bombed, Fordo and those other nuclear sites on a Saturday or something like that, Saturday night. No one was awake. Market's not open, other than crypto, of course, which trades 24/7. But let's just see what happens. I'm worried, but not that worried, because even again, worst case, a little bit of short-term volatility, and we'll forget about it.
Michael Saylor down something like $10 billion or something, but unfazed, need a bigger orange bag. Michael Saylor looking to deploy more funds into Bitcoin.
Yeah, man. That's what you guys got to be looking to. When in doubt, follow this guy. Okay? He ain't worried. You think you're down? You think your bag's down? You ever been down 10 billion in paper losses? I don't think so. So, have some conviction like this guy. Fucking unreal. Unreal. I love Michael Saylor. Anytime you're feeling a little bit of doubt about Bitcoin, you can watch Crypto Paradise, because we're bullish for sure. But man, who's a better pitchman for Bitcoin right now than Michael Saylor? He's so fucking good at pitching this stuff.
I know Thomas Lee's still out there beating the drum for Ethereum, and he's down billions of dollars as well for Bitminer. So, those guys are down big. Now, Bitminer's a little bit different, I guess, because Thomas Lee has other investment courses and other investment portfolios and whatever. But Michael Saylor is going all in on Bitcoin, stayed all in on Bitcoin, has a lot of his own personal wealth in Bitcoin, has a lot of MicroStrategy personal wealth in Bitcoin, and really the company that he built, the software company, has gone all in on Bitcoin. But he still remains unfazed. Been up tens of billions of dollars, now down tens of billions of dollars, riding the wave higher. When in doubt, zoom out. Remember, Michael Saylor's pretty late to the game. I think his average price is somewhere around $74,000 for Bitcoin. So it seems like he's been around forever, but he's primarily been buying from $35,000 all the way down to as high as $126,000. Many of you watching this channel, and us included, were earlier to Bitcoin, but never had the same conviction as him, or never found a way to get near as much money as him into the markets, regardless of price, regardless of timing. Some of the worst DCA known to man done by Michael Saylor, but he continues to fight another day.
You know what he should do? I saw a parody account basically propose this. He should sue Jane Street. He should sue Jane Street for manipulation.
And then take all the winnings into spot Bitcoin buys.
More than anyone. If what they did is, if everyone's correct in what they've been doing, and there's got to be some illegality or at least civil liability if that's what they were doing, he should file a lawsuit against Jane Street. And put all the market makers on notice. If you are going to illegally manipulate the price, I am going to come after you with the best legal team known to man. Fucking great. Get them. You think Jane Street wants all their trade secrets disclosed in Discovery? All their trading strategies disclosed in a public forum? That's the brilliant thing about the U.S. legal system, right? Basically, I know the judge can say redact this, redact that, but for the most part, all their secrets and strategies would be out in the open for their competitors to see what they were doing, opening up to more liability for other bullshit they pulled in other instances. Saylor, I think he's got a real opportunity. File a lawsuit against Jane Street. Fucking do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. The good, the bad, the legal, the illegal. Once you're on the case there, everything will be disclosed. And all your partners, all your competitors can take all that information and use it against you.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think Saylor should sue him. Justice Department should go after him. Maybe not for the Bitcoin manipulation. I don't know if that was fully illegal. See, that's the problem too, right? Is manipulation without insider trading, is that illegal? Can we find a way to make that illegal? Maybe the Clarity Act addresses it. I'm not entirely sure. But what Jane Street did with Terra Luna, trading and wrecking everyone to the tune of like $20 billion based on insider information, that is clearly illegal. Highly illegal. Martha Stewart went to jail for I think she had insider knowledge and sold something not to make money, but to avoid a loss of like $40,000. And then what? And then Jane Street manipulating and just basically destroying a whole company, depegging their stable coin, pocketing billions. That's got to be. You got to be. That's at least a 10 or 20-year prison sentence. Wouldn't you think?
You would think so. You would
No.
think so. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what happens with it. I would say I feel bad for those people, but if half the stuff that has come to light is true, they've cost me a lot of money, they've cost the community a lot of money, and they've made a shit ton of money off the back of really dampening down markets that I participate in and that I believe in the future. And you really slow down the growth in the momentum, not only for price, but also for innovation. Because when prices are down, way less innovators are coming into the market. Way less people can get funded in the market. And not to say that all of them create these holy grails, but, in the, shell company era of 2017, a lot of good innovation came out of it. In the shell company era of 2020 and 2021 for crypto, a lot of good innovation came out of it. A lot of the products you are using now are light years ahead of the products I was using in 2016 and 2017 when it comes to UI, UX, security, functionality, and performance.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Builders really don't show up when the market's this bearish for this long. I know there's the high conviction ones, like you see Ethereum full steam ahead. Like obviously the big boys, they'll continue to build bear or bull. But any newer startup, I mean, they can't barely get funding right now. And if you're like I'm a really smart software engineer, where am I going to put my energy and time? Probably building some AI stuff, vibe coding some product. Who knows? They're not going to go into crypto right now though. So yeah, absolutely, it does hurt the innovation side. It hurts retail. It hurts the people who may be looking to enter the space. If I'm, mom and pop, 55 years old, retiring soon, a couple million in my name, am I going to enter the Wild West with all this manipulation and price go down for 5 months in a row? Probably not. So it hurts them too. Let's get the likes of Jane Street out, get this space cleaned up. I do think it will happen. I think Clarity Act gets passed, and hopefully we resume Bitcoin's price go up.
I think we kind of covered a lot of the news pieces. We looked at several charts. There isn't alpha and gems to really talk about, but we talked about a couple. Altcoins showing a little bit of life, but it's really going to be dependent on can Bitcoin and Ethereum keep this momentum going in the face of what's seemingly going to be the next Black Swan event in the Iranian strike. We shall see. This weekend should be interesting. I would probably be out touching grass rather than looking at charts in the news because, like we said, the clock is ticking. The warships are arriving tomorrow, and last time it was a weekend strike that caused chaos. I'd rather just not be in front of the charts. I'm not going to take action on the news headlines, and I don't think you should either.
Yeah, let's pray for peace. Pray for reasonable minds to prevail. But even if there ends up being a strike, the markets will survive. Bitcoin will survive. Don't panic sell the lows based on some military interventions over in the Middle East. Those things happen all the time. So,
Frank Super, last jump on here on YouTube late here saying, "What's up, boys? You got a lot to catch up on. Another day in paradise for us, although it's been a red paradise for 5 months. Maybe we'll get some grass under our feet, some green candles going, and we can actually get to the real beach. I know you're supposed to be going there, Crypto Amaru, down to the Paradise Pad in Mexico. Are you still planning on doing that, or does the cartel change your plans?"
No, the cartel doesn't change my plan. Just like, I still continue to drop my kids off at school, and I still continue to live my life here in the U.S., even though there's a chance of a school shooter. Like, the chances of you getting killed by cartel in Mexico is as low of you getting killed by a terrorist attack or school shooter or one of those random acts of violence that happen also in the U.S. Yes, they happen. Yes, they're scary. Yes, I feel bad for anyone who gets caught up in it. But the chances of it happening to any one individual is so infinitesimally small. Not only that, in Tulum, it's pretty much a gated community in my condo's in, and you just go to these fancy beach clubs and hang out by the beach. They're not going after that. The worst thing they did was burn a couple of buses in the, Oxos, which is like their 7-Eleven, in the middle part of the country where the cartel is more prevalent. So now I'm not worried. I already got my flight booked. The worst part about it is I thought the prices on the airlines were going to drop because I got a friend looking to stay at our place during spring break. And it was still $1,000 round trip ticket to go from where I live to Cancun.
Damn.
The
I
price
think
got
it will.
dropped.
We'll
during
see.
all this stuff.
If the headlines can keep going for another week or two, I think price drops. It's still early. The airlines are in disbelief. They're like, no, we'll leave it for now.
No, but I think the story's done because already in Puerto Vallarta, where most of the stuff happened from a tourist standpoint, everyone's back to normal. The bars, the beaches. It's like, all right, shitty thing happened for a day. Now I'm gonna drink my cerveza again on the beach.
Let's answer Frank's question here because he got here late, and then we'll need to hop off. We were about to wrap up, Frank, but you caught us with 30 seconds to go. Do we have a bounce to 84 to 86K Bitcoin and then it crashed down to 54K, or do we build from here? Well, for me, the levels that I've been talking about, we can't really talk about 84 or 86K just yet. I've been looking at the moving averages, which are at 73K to 79K on Bitcoin. That would be the next, kind of area we want to get to and build in the area before the next move higher. Also, I think if you get to 84 or really 86, you're already breaking above several 1, 2, 3, 4 resistance levels, and you're getting back into the stage area in which we consolidated when we had the breakout to $98,000 Bitcoin before we had the Greenland FUD and all these black swans that led us to where we were. So I think I'm looking at 73 to 79K as a hesitation area. Try to reclaim that and grind higher. If we get to 86,000, I think we are off to the races. I think we reclaimed many levels. The momentum and the indicators in the macros all look much better for Bitcoin, and we run towards that 98K level that we had the breakout before that black swan event we had with Greenland and Europe, World War III, blah, 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 that people wanted you to believe.
Yeah, to me, it feels much more likely we continue higher than we dump lower, especially after Jane Street seemingly is done manipulating the price down. Okay, we got the Iran situation. Maybe that causes a temporary dump of 5 or 10%. But to get to 54, I mean, that's pretty severe downtrend from here. I think a lot of the 4-year cyclists, they're already sold.
Well, I think
Who's selling at these levels?
Yeah, the speed hump for 54K is going to be decided this weekend. The speed hump for 54K gets decided this weekend. If we actually are just posturing or if we actually have war with Iran, we'll see what kind of black swan selling we can get out of that. But if we can get over the speed hump, and that could potentially happen this weekend with Iran, and then we have Clarity Act by end of March, I think we're over the speed hump and we're going up the hill rather than falling off the cliff.
Exactly. Agree with that. Hang in there. Don't sell your Bitcoin for pennies, guys. That's my best advice to you. Someone who's held on to it since 2017, around $2,500 Bitcoin. I did make once the mistake of selling Bitcoin. I've told you guys the story many times to buy a TV. That TV probably cost me $50,000. So don't sell your Bitcoin. Whatever you do, hang on to that shit. It's going to $1 million. 10 years from now, we'll all be retired on the beach. All right, we got to wrap this thing up. I got some calls to be on here, but it was a great show today, guys. Thanks for joining in, and until tomorrow,